Tonight on First at 9, this Wednesday, the 26th of June 2024. Debt is treated. Sri Lanka reaches final debt restructuring agreement with the Official Creditor Committee and the Exim Bank of China, securing up to 92% relief on repayments. Debt postponed. All bilateral loan payments postponed till 2028. Debt repayment period extended till 2048, reveals President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Japan, Sri Lanka. Foreign Minister to visit Japan this week. Discussions to be held on the resumption of stalled Japan-funded projects. Dollar inflows. Sri Lanka earns over $6 billion in exports during the first 5 months of this year.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක. ආරංචිය සුබයි.
From Ada Derana, this is Ada Derana First at 9 with Indivadi Amuata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a very warm welcome. You're joining us once again on First at 9, your prime-time English news service here at Ada Derana 24. And we start off with your top story making headlines tonight. State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinga today confirmed that Sri Lanka officially reached the final agreement on the restructuring of $5.8 billion worth of debt between Sri Lanka and the Official Creditor Committee. The agreement was signed on the sidelines of the Paris Forum 2024 in France. In a message, State Minister Semasinga said that Sri Lanka has also signed the framework agreement for the final debt treatment agreements with the Export-Import Bank of China. With the finalization of the agreements, Sri Lanka is expected to receive up to 92% relief on repayments of debt.
Sri Lanka was able to reach an agreement in principle with its Official Creditor Committee led by Japan, France and India in 2023 as Sri Lanka entered into a $2.9 billion agreement with the International Monetary Fund. Accordingly, the final debt restructuring agreement with the Official Creditor Committee was signed today in Paris by the Sri Lankan delegation led by State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinga.
And I think as a Sri Lankan, it's going to be a milestone achievement for Sri Lanka to go forward in a recovery process as well as moving towards growth. We appreciate all the leadership and the support extended to us by the OCC, co-chaired by Japan, India and France, and also the support extended to us by the Chinese Exim Bank, and of course the support extended by the IMF and the World Bank. So as Sri Lanka, we remain committed to continue our reform program, and I'm very confident with this achievement we will foster growth and also we will have more confidence in our economy. So this particular date was looking forward by all Sri Lankans. So from today, I think we could progress with the other activities. The economy is bouncing back strongly.
Thank you very much, you and all your team at the Central Bank, at the Ministry of Finance, the Secretariat, the experts in Paris, in India and in Japan. They have worked with you, also in coordination with the experts of all the official creditors. It was not easy because it's a complicated process, but it shows that collectively it can work, and you can count on us also to support you because the MOU, it's a very important milestone, but it's not the end of the story. We have now to translate that into first signature, then bilateral agreements, and we will be also supporting you also after that.
It was not easy to have a discussion and have a good negotiation, but finally, thanks to all of the relevant people, and we really hope to our achievement today to also facilitate other discussion with other creators, including China as well as other private sectors, and it will lead to Sri Lanka's economic success reform and to benefits to Sri Lankan government as well as Sri Lankan people.
Like Honorable Minister said, we remain committed to continue to take forward the process at the earliest so that a strong signal goes out for the rest of the investor community as well. We would like to reiterate our strong commitment to ensure full support to the resilient recovery of the Sri Lankan authorities' economic progress.
Concurrent to reaching the agreement in principle with the Official Creditor Committee, Sri Lanka and the Exim Bank of China agreed on the key principles related to the restructuring of $4.2 billion worth of loans in October 2023. State Minister Semasinha in his X message said Sri Lanka has finalized the debt treatment agreement with the Export-Import Bank of China following a meeting held today with the Chinese Vice Minister of Finance Liao Min during the Paris Forum 2024 in France. He said the framework agreement for this debt treatment was signed by Sri Lanka and China in Colombo today. The State Minister also expressed his gratitude to the OCC chairs, France, India and Japan, as well as the Export-Import Bank of China for their leadership in this process, as well as to all OCC members for their unwavering support. Meanwhile, the President's Media Division, in a statement regarding the signing of the agreement with the Official Creditor Committee, said the agreement grants significant debt relief, allowing Sri Lanka to allocate funds for essential public services and to secure concessional financing for development needs.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
Delivering his special statement today, President Ranil Wickremesinghe announced that debt restructuring agreements will postpone all bilateral loan repayments to foreign countries by Sri Lanka until 2028. He added that Sri Lanka will have until 2043 to repay these loans on concessional terms. It was also highlighted that in 2022, Sri Lanka allocated 9.2% of GDP to foreign debt repayments. However, with the ongoing efforts, he added that this percentage is expected to decrease to less than 4.5% between 2027 and 2032, reflecting significant fiscal improvement.
අද පෙරවරුවේ පැරිස් නුවරදී ලංකාවේ ප්‍රධාන නිල දෙපාර්ශ්වික ණය හිමියන් සමග ණය පිටුවගත කිරීමේ සාකච්ඡාව අවසන් කරමින්
In Paris this morning, Sri Lanka concluded discussions on debt restructuring with the Official Creditor Committee and reached a final agreement. We also reached a final agreement with the Exim Bank of China in Beijing. The government is in the process of taking necessary steps with this regard. This is good news for all of those who truly love this nation. We worked hard during the past 2 years to reach an agreement with bilateral creditors. We held lengthy discussions. The economic success that we achieved during the past few years helped us during these discussions. I appreciate the support extended by China and the Exim Bank, the nations of the Official Creditor Committee, co-chaired by Japan, India, France and the Paris Club Secretariat in order to make these discussions a success. I am thankful for the officials of the Sri Lankan government and other countries who were involved in these discussions. I also thank Clifford Chance and Lazard, who were our advisors. With these agreements, we will be able to postpone the repayment of bilateral debt until 2028. From 2028 onwards, we will receive a time period until 2043 to settle these debts on concessional terms. We concluded domestic debt restructuring in 2023. We are now able to conclude the restructuring of bilateral debt. Arriving at an agreement with the private creditors, including international sovereign bondholders, is our next step. If we continue in the same path, we will be able to arrive at these agreements. The discussions in this regard are continuing. The economy will receive breathing space as a result of these agreements we reached today. In 2022, 9.2% of our GDP accounted for debt repayment. Between 2027 and 2042, our debt repayment as a percentage of GDP will be at a lower level at 4.5% or lower.
දලදේශීය නිෂ්පාදනයේ 4.5%කටත් අඩු ප්‍රමාණයක් පවත්වාගෙන යාමට දැන් අපට ඉඩ සැලසෙවි.
Horizon Campus 2024 intake. Register now.
The United States welcomed the final agreement on debt restructuring between Sri Lanka and official creditor nations that was reached today on the sidelines of the Paris Forum. In X message, U.S. Ambassador to Sri Lanka Julie Chung said that the agreements are a positive step forward in Sri Lanka's economic recovery and resilience, helping build more confidence in Sri Lanka's fiscal environment. She added that the United States encourages Sri Lanka to continue the reform process, adopting transparent and sustainable changes that foster long-term prosperity and growth. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa says the government must be mindful of the people's needs when entering into agreements with the country's external creditors. The opposition leader highlighted that the recent agreements related to restructuring on external debt have not provided relief to the people who have been put under severe economic burden with the restructuring of internal debt.
The 262nd edition of the Sakwala program was held at Pamanuvila Mahavidyalaya in Biyagama under the patronage of opposition leader Sajith Premadasa. As a country, we have $92 billion of internal and external debt. Additionally, another $1.6 billion of unpaid interest has accumulated over the last few years. Now the government entered into a debt restructuring agreement with the IMF because the country cannot move forward with this amount of debt. However, we should be informed regarding these agreements. As a country, the government should be mindful of the needs of the country's 22 million people before agreeing to those terms. Following the restructuring of internal debt, the people of the country were put under heavy strain. However, that burden has not been relieved by these agreements with the external creditors.
Now, Minister of Foreign Affairs, President's Counsel Lale Sabri will undertake an official visit to Japan on the 1st of July. During his visit, he is expected to meet several high-level officials of the Japanese government, including Japanese Minister of Foreign Affairs Yoko Kamikawa and Chief Cabinet Secretary of Japan Yoshimasa Hayashi. The matter of the resumption of funding for stalled Japanese-backed projects in Sri Lanka is expected to be discussed during the Foreign Minister's visit.
According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Minister President's Counsel Lale Sabri will be visiting Japan following an invitation extended by Japanese Minister of Foreign Affairs Yoko Kamikawa, who arrived in Sri Lanka for a two-day official visit in May this year. The Foreign Minister's engagements in Japan will include a bilateral discussion with his Japanese counterpart. Further, the Foreign Minister is expected to call on several other dignitaries, including Chief Cabinet Secretary of Japan Yoshimasa Hayashi, who also arrived in Sri Lanka last year during his tenure as the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Addressing a media briefing recently, Foreign Minister Sabri commented on plans to hold discussions with Japanese officials on the resumption of funding for Japanese-backed projects that are currently halted due to the debt restructuring process.
Official creditor agreements we are expecting to sign at any moment, very soon. If that happens, Japan has told us they will not wait for the repayment to commence to start the projects. Whatever the project which have been suspended, they will start immediately. I'm hoping to visit Japan at the invitation of the Foreign Minister of Japan in first week of July. So we hope that OCC official confirmation and the MOU could be signed before that, so that we can finalize the resumption of those projects.
Now, initial discussions on the timeline of the restructuring of Ceylon Petroleum Corporation's refinery as a separate state-owned entity took place between the Ministry of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, and the management of the CPC and its refinery. The minister revealed that, that during the discussion, it was decided to revise the Petroleum Corporation's cadre and salary structure and to introduce digital platforms for a number of its services.
On the 19th of June 2024, it was revealed before the Committee on Public Enterprises that the Cabinet of Ministers had granted preliminary approval for the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation's refinery in Sapugaskanda to be set up as a separate state-owned entity.
Under the SOE restructuring program, we were granted initial cabinet approval to restructure our refinery as a separate state-owned enterprise.
Subsequently, a discussion on the timeline and process for implementing the proposed reforms was held yesterday between the Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, and the senior management of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and the Sapugaskanda refinery. The minister, in an ex-post, stated that the restructuring of the refinery will attract and raise necessary investment for improving the refinery's fuel quality, efficiency, capacity and lowering the cost of production. He added that the CPC's current approved cadre and salary structure will also be revised and that digital platforms will be introduced for multiple functions and services. Meanwhile, today another meeting was held between the Power and Energy Minister and the management of Trinco Petroleum Terminal Private Limited, during which development plans and the progress of the Trincomalee oil tank farm were taken up for discussion. In an ex-post, Minister Kanchana Wijesekara revealed that during the discussion, it was decided to conduct a health check on all existing tanks, design the pipeline, develop the infrastructure in stages, and utilize the tanks for fuel storage for domestic and export purposes.
Police fired water cannons and tear gas to disperse the demonstration organised by several teacher-principal trade unions opposite the Fort railway station. The protest was launched as part of the island-wide trade union action instituted by the Teacher-Principal Trade Union Alliance, demanding immediate solutions to teacher-principal salary discrepancies.
Members of the Teacher-Principal Trade Union Alliance reported in sick today as part of the nationwide strike action demanding immediate solutions to teacher-principal salary discrepancies. The trade union action, which coincides with the start of the second school term, disrupted academic activities at many schools across the country. Concurrently, another protest action was instituted by several teacher-principal trade unions in front of the Colombo Fort railway station. The protest march led to severe traffic congestion in the area. In the wake of the protests, the Colombo Fort Magistrates Court issued an order preventing the staging of demonstrations in a manner that inconveniences the public. The court also prohibited the demonstrators from entering the Finance Ministry, the Presidential Secretariat, the Central Bank and the President's House as per a request made by the Kompañavidya police. However, a tense situation arose as the protesters attempted to march towards the Lake House roundabout via the Lotus Road. Police resorted to using tear gas and water cannons to disperse the protesters as they gathered near the Ceramic Junction.
State Minister for Finance Ranjith Simalapitiya assures that the debt restructuring process will not drag the country back into crisis. However, SJB MP Hector Apuami highlighted that even if Sri Lanka postpones debt repayment until 2028, government will have to pay interest accumulated over the period. NPP MP Nalinda Jayatissa meanwhile highlighted that today's debt restructuring announcement is a mere portrayal of President Ranil Wickremesinghe's policies of selling assets, accumulating debt and collecting taxes.
The situation in the country is not the same as it was during the struggle. We have overcome the crisis and we are following the debt restructuring process. We have completed the task started within the promised time frame.
We have to gradually stabilize the country. This is the only way for us to overcome bankruptcy. If any political party is spreading misinformation about the country's economy, they must be exposed.
Ranil Wickremesinghe only has three answers to every problem: selling assets, accumulating debt and collecting taxes. His alleged good news will be nothing but a repeat of these three principles.
We must keep in mind that even if the government postpones debt repayments until 2028, we will still have to pay the interest accumulated over that period.
Our discussions with the IMF were not to avoid paying our debts. We attempted to extend the repayment deadlines. The most important step is securing debt write-offs. In the terms of the IMF agreements, there is a clause about securing a $17 billion write-off. This is the nature of the debt restructuring process. It will not drag the country back into a crisis.
Speaking at an SLPP convention in Madhavachya today, national organizer of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Namal Rajapaksa, said that even though the SLPP supported President Ranil Wickremesinghe's appointment, the party does not agree with all of his policies.
The convention of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna in the Madhavachiya electorate was held this evening in front of the Madhavachiya bus stand under the patronage of the party's national organiser Namal Rajapaksa.
The Janata Vimukti Peramuna thought that they taught us a lesson by assaulting and torching our houses. However, they were unable to do that. We did not run away. Basil Rajapaksa has developed the party to such an extent where it is capable of appointing a president.
It is true that we appointed Ranil Wickremesinghe as president via parliament. We do not agree with him on certain policy matters. We are clear about that. However, we also wanted to restore political stability and resurrect the country that had collapsed from the struggle. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna is the political power of the next generation. We are ready to face any election in the future. We are against the postponement of elections. While protecting our camp and its policies, I request that all of you join us to provide leadership in making Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna victorious.
Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Jayagrahi Mamatakala Yomu Karanna Patamunna Selaye Nayakatwe laba denne.
Leader of the Maubima Janata Party, Dilip Jayavira, says the Sarvajana Balaya alliance has emerged as the primary alternative for the people of Sri Lanka, representing the ideology of leftist nationalism. He made these remarks during the inauguration of the Maubima Janata Party Galle District office.
The inauguration ceremony of the Maubima Janata Party's Galle District office took place today, and it was attended by party leader Dilip Jayavira, senior leader Dr. Hemakumara Nanayakkara and several other senior members of the party.
අපි මේ අද ගාල්ලෙන් ආරම්භ කරන දිස්ත්‍රික් ශාඛා කාර්යාල විවෘත කිරීම 25ම තාමත්ම ඉක්මනින් තුරු ශාඛා කාර්යාල විවෘත කරනු ඇති.
ඉදිරි ජනාධිපතිතුමා කොහොමද වැඩි වෙලාවට මෞබිම ජනතා පක්ෂය
සර්ව ජන බලය ලෙස වහාම දියත් කිරීමට සූදානම් වනවා අපේ ජනාධිපතිවරණ ප්‍රචාරක ව්‍යාපෘතිය.
ඉදිරි ජනාධිපතිතුමා આવොත් ඔබතුමා මෞබිම ජනතා පක්ෂ නායක විදියට ජනතාව දෙන පණිවිඩය මොකක්ද?
අපි මේ රටේ වමේ කඳවුර ජාතිකත්වයේ කඳවුර නියෝජනය කරන එකම බලවේගය. අනිකුත් සියලුම පක්ෂ එකතු වෙලා තියෙනවා ඒ දක්ෂිණාංශික ලිබරල් බලවේගයට. රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්මයාත් සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස මහත්මයාත් අපේ මිත්‍ර අනුර කුමාර මහත්මයාත් ඒ ලිබරල් ගමනමයි යන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ වැල්පාලමේම යන්නේ. ඒ තුන්දෙනාම එක පැත්තක ඉන්නවා. අපි මේ පැත්තේ ඉන්නවා. මේ ලංකාවේ මිනිසුන්ට අපි විකල්පයක් දීලා තියෙනවා.
Welcome back. We take you to business news now. Sri Lanka has earned $6.4 billion worth of export earnings during the first 5 months of this year. According to the Export Development Board, this includes $5 billion worth of merchandise exports and $1.38 billion worth of service exports. Meanwhile, total export earnings during the month of May were recorded at $1.28 billion, which includes $960 million worth of merchandise and $327 million worth of services exports.
During the month of May, export earnings from rubber and rubber finished products increased by 5.62% year-on-year to $81.17 million. Earnings from coconut-based products increased by 2.8% to $68.56 million in May compared to the same month last year due to strong earnings in coconut kernel and coconut fiber products. The total export earnings from diamonds, gems and jewellery also increased by 2.39% year-on-year to $32.19 million in May 2024. Export earnings from tea, however, decreased by 1.1% year-on-year to $115.04 million. Apparel and textiles also saw a 5.37% year-on-year decline to $390.29 million in May this year compared to May last year. Meanwhile, cumulative merchandise exports during the period between January and May 2024 increased by 3% to $5 billion compared to the corresponding period last year. The estimated value of service exports increased by 9% to $1.38 billion during the period from January to May 2024 compared to the corresponding period in 2023. The total exports for the cumulative period between January and May 2024, which include both merchandise and services, were recorded at $6.4 billion, a 4.32% increase compared to the same period last year. Earnings from the export of tea increased year-on-year by 7.88% to $565.28 million between January and May this year due to the strong performance in the export of bulk tea. In addition, export earnings from rubber and rubber finished products increased by 10.72% to $416.2 million between January and May 2024 compared to the same period last year.
Taking you to the Colombo Stock Exchange, stocks edged lower today as a result of price losses in counters such as Mercer Corp, LOLC Holdings and Hatton National Bank, with turnover crossing 1.8 billion rupees. The benchmark index settled 0.1% lower at 12,261, while the S&P SL20 settled 0.02% lower at 3,623 during today's session. The utility sector was the top contributor to turnover, while the capital goods sector was the second highest. Foreign investors were net buyers, purchasing stocks worth 110 million rupees, while domestic investors were net sellers, offloading 1.81 billion rupees worth of stocks. Up next, we have Minal Vikramage from Capital Alliance with some thoughts on the current status of the economy.
In the period under review, crude oil prices held around $85 per barrel, exhibiting an increasing trend due to a stronger demand outlook and supply concerns stemming from escalating conflicts in Europe and the Middle East. Overall, Brent prices increased by $0.87 per barrel and WTI prices increased by $1.14 per barrel. Looking at the weekly average weighted prime lending rate for the week ending June 20th, 2024, it decreased by 6 basis points to 9.09% compared to the previous week. The average weighted call money rate recorded on June 20, 2024 was 8.79%, up from 8.69% at the end of the previous week. The total outstanding market liquidity was a surplus of 54.05 billion rupees by June 20, 2024, compared to a surplus of 123.96 billion at the end of the previous week. The total volume of secondary market transactions in T-bills and T-bonds decreased by 26% in the reporting week compared to the week before.
And that wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. I'm Indivari Amuatta. Good night.